My name is Meg. You can call me Meg, you can call me Creative or Creative Garden, whatever works for you. I will pretty much answer to anything. Um, I've been reading on Monday nights. I've been reading The Princess Bride, um, going through the chapters and just kind of looking at um, writing techniques, pacing, the way that things flow, character development. And in particular, at least for this book, there's been a little bit of discussion of like comparison between the book and the movie. Because I've seen the movie a bunch of times, I've never read the book until on stream. So this is my first time experiencing it and I'm enjoying it so far. So I am going to try and give a little bit of a recap. We were actually pretty far through the book, so I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to do like a very detailed recap, but basically, Wesley and Buttercup fell in love with each other. When Buttercup told Wesley how she felt about him, he said, I'm going to go away, I'm going to try and make some money, and then I'm going to come back and marry you when I have money. And so he went away. He got on board a ship, and the ship that he was on was attacked by the Dread Pirate Roberts, who everybody knows does not leave survivors. So Buttercup had a moment, a long period of time where she kind of distanced herself from the world, and when she finally came out of her room, from growing from a girl basically into a young woman, she came out much more mature. She said, I am never going to love again. And she went throughout her day, just business as usual, work on the farm, do whatever needs to be done for the farm, and not really interested at all in any kind of relationships. Prince Humperdinck discovered her through various creepy ways, and he said, you're going to marry me, and she said, I'm not going to marry you for love, and he said, that's fine, I'm not in it for love. He turns her into he grants her a title so that she's a princess, so that he can marry her without it being said that he's marrying a commoner, which is kind of a gross way to think about it. But I guess that's just the way they did it in the like fantasy history sort of way of things. She has her introduction to the people, and then she is kidnapped by these three people who we know from the movies. But they are not introduced by name initially when they kidnap her in the book. So Andre the Giant's character, Fezzik, Inigo Montoya, who's the sword fencer, sword guy, and Vizzini, who's the smart one from Sicily. So as they're kidnapping her to take her to wherever it is that they're planning to take her, they notice that they're being followed by a man in black. And one by one, they are each bested by the man in black. And he comes and he takes Princess Buttercup. They run off. This is more detailed than I was planning to do. They run off in a direction. They find themselves in the fire swamp. She discovers that it's actually her Wesley in disguise, who is now the Dread Pirate Roberts, because it's a title, not a name. They get out of the fire swamp. Oh man. Prince Humperdinck finds them at the end of the fire swamp, and he takes now I'm losing words. He takes Wesley captive, but he tells Buttercup that Wesley has been returned to his ship. So she believes that he's off sailing the high seas as the Dread Pirate Roberts, and in actuality, Wesley has been taken to the 5th level of the Zoo of Death to be tortured by Count Rugen. I think I got his name right, Count Rugen. And at the very end of the last chapter, Wesley is dead. Hold on, I skipped a whole chapter, I think. The whole last thing that we read. Buttercup discovers that Buttercup starts having all these nightmares about like walking away from her love when she had just found him again. She's having all these nightmares. She asks the prince to help her get Wesley back. So she writes this letter to send out to the four seas of the four directions on the fastest ships to try and catch him. But of course, Humperdinck knows that Wesley is not out on the high seas and does not send any of his ships. Buttercup discovers this deception. She says, "You knew all along that you never sent the letter, and he's not coming for me, and you've basically tricked me into going through with this wedding." And Humperdinck runs down to the place where Wesley is being held, and he kills him. And that's at the very end of the last chapter that we read. We also saw that Inigo and Fezzik met up again, and they are trying to get the man in black, because with Vizzini dead, they need to know what to do next, and the man in black, being the one who bested Vizzini, is the best one to give them a plan of action. So they are basically leaderless, and they need to find the man in black so that they can have a direction to accomplish their goals. And that is where we left it, with Inigo and Fezzik just about to walk into the wrong door of the Zoo of Death. The door that means sure... Was it spiders? I feel like there were spiders involved. Anyway, it was the wrong door. It was not the safe door, and so they were going to enter into danger. That's where we're starting in this next chapter, and I'm going to get right into it. Chapter 7 is called The Wedding. Inigo allowed Fezzik to open the door, not because he wished to hide behind the giant's strength, but rather because the giant's strength was crucial to their entering. Someone would have to force the thick door from its hinges, and that was right up Fezzik's alley. "It's open," Fezzik said, simply turning the knob, peering inside. "Open?" Inigo hesitated. "Close it, then. There must be something wrong. Why would something as valuable as the prince's private zoo be left unlocked?" "It smells of animals, something awful in there," Fezzik said. "Did I get a whiff?" "Let me think," Inigo said. "I'll figure it out." And he tried to do his best, but it made no sense. You didn't leave diamonds lying around on the breakfast table, and you kept the Zoo of Death shut and bolted. There had to be a reason. It was just a matter of exercising your brain power, and the answer would be there. The answer to why the door happened to be unlocked was really this. It was always unlocked, and the reason for that was really this: safety. No one who had entered via the front door had ever survived to exit again. The idea basically belonged to Count Rugen, who helped the prince architect the place. The prince selected the location, the farthest corner of the castle grounds, away from everything, so the roars wouldn't bother the servants. But the count designed the entrance. The real entrance was by a giant tree, where a root lifted and revealed a staircase, and down you went until you arrived at the 5th level. The false entrance, called the real entrance, took you down the levels the ordinary way, first to second, second to third, or actually second to death. "Yes," Inigo said finally. "You figured it out?" "The reason the door was unlocked is simply this. The albino would have locked it. He would never have been so stupid as not to. But, Fezzik, my friend, we got to him before he got to it. Clearly, once he was done with his wheelbarrowing, he would have begun locking and bolting. It's quite all right. You can stop worrying. Let's go." "I just feel so safe with you," Fezzik said, and he pulled the door open a second time. As he did it, he noticed that not only was the door unlocked, it didn't even have a place for a lock, and he wondered should he mention that to Inigo, but decided against it. because Inigo would have to wait and figure some more, and they had done enough of that already, because although he said he felt safe with Inigo, in truth he was very frightened. He had heard odd things about this place, and lions didn't bother him, and who cared about gorillas? They were nothing. It was the creepers that made him squeamish, and the slitherers, and the stingers, and the everything, Fezzik decided, to be truthful and honest. Spiders and snakes and bugs and bats and you name it. He just wasn't very fond of any of them. Still smells of animals, he said, and he held the door open for Inigo, and together, stride for stride, they entered the Zoo of Death, the great door shutting silently behind them. Quite a bizarre place, Inigo said, moving past several large cages, in which were cheetahs and hummingbirds and other swift things. At the end of the hall was another door with a sign above it saying, "To Level 2. They opened that door and saw a flight of stairs leading very steeply down. "Careful," Inigo said. "Stay close to me and watch your balance." They started down toward the second level. "If I tell you something, will you promise not to laugh at me or mock me or be mean to me?" Fezzik asked. "My word," Inigo nodded. "I'm just scared to pieces," Fezzik said. "Be sure it ceases," Inigo said right back. "Oh, that's a wonderful rhyme. Some other time," Inigo said, making another, feeling quite bright about the whole thing, sensing the pleasure in having Fezzik visibly relax as they descended. So he smiled and clapped Fezzik on his great shoulder for the good fellow he was. But deep, deep inside, Inigo's stomach was nodding. He was absolutely appalled and astonished that a man of unlimited strength and power would be scared to pieces. Until Fezzik spoke, Inigo was positive that he was the only one who was genuinely scared to pieces, and the fact that they both were did not bode well, if panic time came. Someone would have to keep his wits, and he had assumed automatically that since Fezzik had so few, he would find retaining them not all that difficult. No good, Inigo realized. Well, he would simply have to do his best to avoid panic situations, and that was that. The staircase was straight and very long, but eventually they reached the end of it. Another door. Fezzik gave it a push. It opened. Another corridor lined with cages, big ones though, and inside great baying hippos and a 20-foot alligator thrashing angrily in shallow water. "We must hurry," Inigo said, picking up the pace, much as we might like to dawdle. And he half ran toward a sign that said, "To Level 3. Inigo opened the door and looked down, and Fezzik peered over his shoulder. Inigo said. This staircase was different. It was not nearly as steep, and it curved halfway, so that whatever was near the bottom of it was quite out of sight as they stood at the top preparing to go down. There were strange candles burning high on the walls out of reach. The shadows they made were very long and very thin. "Well, I'm certainly glad I wasn't brought up here," Inigo said, trying for a joke. "Fear," Fezzik said, the rhyme out before he could stop it. Inigo exploded. "Really? If you can't maintain control, I'm going to send you right back up and you can just wait there all by yourself." "Don't leave me. Don't make me leave you. Please. I meant to say beer. I don't know how the F got in there." "I'm really losing patience with you. Come along," Inigo said, and he started down the curving stairs, Fezzik following, and as the door closed behind them, two things happened. One, the door quite clearly locked. Two, out went the candles on the high walls. "Don't be frightened," Inigo screamed. I'm not, Fezzik screamed right back, and then, above his heartbeat, he managed, "What are we going to do?" "Simple," said Inigo after a while. "Are you frightened too?" asked Fezzik in the darkness. "Not remotely," Inigo said with great care. "And before, I meant to say easy. I don't know how the S got in there. Look, we can't go back and we certainly don't want to stay here, so we just must keep on going as we were before these little things happened. Down. Down is our direction, Fezzik, but I can tell you're a bit edgy about all this, so, out of the goodness of my heart, I will let you walk down, not behind me and not in front of me, but right next to me, on the same step, stride for stride, and you put an arm around my shoulder, because that will probably make you feel better, and I, so as not to make you feel foolish, will put an arm around your shoulder, and thus, safe, protected, together, we will descend. Will you draw your sword with your free hand? I already have. Will you make a fist with yours? It's clenched. Then let's look on the bright side. We're having an adventure, Fezzik, and most people live and die without being as lucky as we are. They moved down one step, then another, then two, then three, as they got the hang of it. Why do you think they locked the door behind us? Fezzik asked as they moved. To add spice to our trip, I suspect, replied Inigo. It was certainly one of his weaker answers, but the best he could come up with. Here's where the turn starts, said Fezzik, and they slowed, making the sharp turn without stumbling, continuing on down. And they took away the candles for the same reason. Spice. Most likely. Don't squeeze me quite so hard. Don't you squeeze me quite so hard. But then they knew they were for it. There has been for many years a running battle among jungle zoologists as to just which of the giant snakes is the biggest. The anaconda men are forever trumpeting the Orinoco specimen that weighed well over 500 pounds, while the python people never fail to reply by pointing out that the African rock found outside Zambezi measured 34 feet 7 inches. The argument, of course, is silly because biggest is a vague word, having no value whatever in arguments if one is serious. But any serious snake enthusiast would admit, whatever his schooling, that the Arabian Garstini, though shorter than the python and lighter than the anaconda, was quicker and more ravenous than either, and this specimen of Prince Humperdinck's was not only remarkable for its speed and agility, it was also kept in a permanent state just verging on the outskirts of starvation, so the first coil came like lightning as it dropped from above them, and pinioned their hands so the fist and sword were useless, and the second coil imprisoned their arms, and, "Do something," Inigo cried. "I can't, I'm caught, you do something. Fight it, Fezzik. It's too strong for me." "Nothing is too strong for you." The third coil was done now, around the upper shoulders, and the fourth coil, the final coil, involved the throat, and Inigo whispered in terror because he could hear the beast's breathing now, could actually feel its breath. "Fight it. I'm... Fezzik trembled with fear and whispered, "Forgive me, Inigo." "Oh, Fezzik. What?" "I had such rhymes for you." "What rhymes?" Silence. The fourth coil was finished. "Inigo, what rhymes?" Silence. Snake breath. "Inigo, I want to know the rhymes before I die. Inigo, I really want to know. Inigo, tell me the rhymes," Fezzik said, and by now he was very frustrated, and more than that he was spectacularly angry, and one arm came clear of one coil, and that made it a bit less of a chore to fight free of the second coil, and that meant he could take that arm and bring it to the aid of the other arm, and now he was yelling it out, "You're not going anywhere until I know those rhymes," and the sound of his own voice was really very impressive, deep and resonant. And who was this snake, anyway, getting in the path of Fezzik when there were rhymes to learn? And by this time, not only were both arms free of the bottom three coils, but he was furious at the interruption, and his hands grabbed toward the snake breath. And he didn't know if snakes had necks or not, but whatever it was that you called the part that was under its mouth, that was the part he had between his great hands, and he gave it a smash against the wall, and the snake hissed and spit, but the fourth coil was looser, so Fezzik smashed it again, and a third time, and then he brought his hands back a bit for leverage, and he began to whip the beast against the walls like a native washerwoman beating a skirt against rocks. And when the snake was dead, Inigo said, "Actually, I had no specific rhymes in mind. I just had to do something to get you into action." Fezzik was panting terribly from his labors. "You lied to me, is what you're saying. My only friend in all my life turns out to be a liar." He started tromping down the stairs, Inigo stumbling after him. Fezzik reached the door at the bottom and threw it open and slammed it, with Inigo just managing to slip inside before the door crashed shut. It locked immediately. Hi there. Thanks for joining our book club. If you'd like to join the conversation, I would love it if you would leave us a comment. And if you'd like to see more, check out the playlist.